This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to episode number 62 of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company. I'm your host, Vito, Jerome Chirco, alongside my sidekick, my partner in crime, the magical, the one and only Doc from Doc and Jock. That is John Macaroon. John, what's going on today?
The people of this country are furious.
You want to know why, Vito? As we're recording this, the news has come down. On Tuesday, Alex Avila spoke to the media. Were you invited to go down to Comerica Park to hear the Sully news, the very bad news that he delivered on Tuesday?
Nobody here was invited, nor will ever be invited.
My goodness. Well, he dropped the news, and Lynn Hennig of the Detroit News, he came out and wrote an article about a couple weeks back, and we referenced it. We had said that the Tigers are likely not going to be the same team in 2017 as they were in 2016. There's likely to be a reduction in payroll, and he's talking about potentially going younger and cheaper. And when that news broke, it kind of has sent Detroit into a little bit of a tailspin. The fans are a little bit nervous. But Vito, if you follow us at the Detroit Podcast Network, I told you the day of the trade deadline, when they didn't make any moves, they didn't sell off any pieces, I told you the window was closed, and it was shut. And I told you that, and I told everybody on this podcast network that it was time to make the move back then. But now he's kind of made it more official. This team, the 2017 version of the Detroit Tigers, is going to look drastically different in 2016, younger and cheaper.
Yeah, they're shutting the window on the Tigers having a chance to win it all in the near future. Next year now looks like it's going to be a rebuilding season. Not only retooling, but more full-fledged rebuilding mode in the sense of that JD Martinez, a guy like that, could be moved. I mean, all these guys now you have to suspect, or at least entertain the thought of those guys, such as JD Martinez being dealt, because if they are fully rebuilding, JD Martinez is a top trade chip that you have to consider dealing. Ian Kinsler has to be dealt. He has to be the first one moved out that has value. I think you have to try to move him as much as you can because he has value that is sky high right now after his 2016 campaign, especially his first half of 2016 when he should have been an all-star and really was the MVP of the Tigers roster as a whole in the first half of the 2016 season. So move on from Ian Kinsler, get younger at second base. You can even do something at shortstop, not getting younger per se because Jose Iglesias still is younger and relatively on the cheap for what he's making right now with the Tigers. And JD Martinez isn't making a ton right now, but is due for a big payday coming up very soon here. You deal him then to trim the payroll and to get younger, maybe a little bit younger. He's not an old guy either. So he's still not on the downside, but on the upside of his career, having prime years left and being on the right side of 30. So under 30, which is a key for building a major league roster that you want to see win in the future, in the long-term future specifically. So JD is a building block, but other teams see that too, will gravitate toward his name and want to deal for him and give up some big assets to get him in return for their franchise. That's why you got to consider dealing JD Martinez as well. Sad but true, Doc.
Well, you got to look at it that obviously in baseball there's a luxury tax, and so you're looking at the payroll trying to get around $170 million to spend on this team for 2017. So in order to cut payroll, you might be looking at a situation where you don't re-up K-Rod, you don't re-up Cameron Maybin, and you move the likes of J.D. Martinez or a Justin Verlander. So of those names, which name do you believe would hurt the fan base the most in terms of probably upsetting the fan base? Do you think that on our Twitter poll, the name that upset most people when we were talking about trading him was Justin Verlander? Mm-hmm. He's got a long history. He's got 3 years left at $28 million per. I know it's tough to hear, fans out there that are listening to this podcast, but you got to remember, if you're going to start the process of looking younger and having a cheaper payroll, Justin Verlander is a pitcher that you could seriously consider, maybe trading off to the National League, maybe looking at Boston and seeing if you can get a haul for him, a haul for J.D. Martinez. You let go of Cameron Maybin and K-Rod. And the other name that's being talked about maybe as a guy that, based upon his performance, could bring you back a boatload of young talent is Justin Upton. he did enough at the end of the year where people will go, there's probably a lot of sizzle in that bat. And and if you listen to what Avila said on Tuesday, he finally revealed what everybody's been talking about, that trying to buy a world championship just didn't work out for the Tigers. They need to go younger. They need to rebuild the minor league system. And while it's going to be tough to look at world championship success, you got to remember, you got some young arms that can do some things. Whereas if you can pick up 2 to 3 prospects with the likes of JV gone, JD gone, you move those guys or you get a haul for Justin Upton, then you got 6 to 8 players that are prospects that if you scout correctly and you trust the people that are making those decisions, you can stock up the minor league system and then improve your drafting position and who you're taking. You're not that far away within 4 to 5 years of maybe contending if the young arms pan out. Now, this is all hopeful. That yes, we already know this. I already knew it. The days of the Tigers winning the World Series were over. I knew it from the eye test. I called it throughout the year. We were hoping that, our ceiling was for them to get to the wild card. Once they hired Brad Ausmus, I knew they're probably not going to win the World Series. But now, Dave Dombrowski helped you out a little bit with a haul when he left. And now it's Avila's job. His number one job will be to do a lot better job of bringing in talent, because some of the contracts that he gave out his first go-round, not impressive. That Mike Pelfrey deal is terrible. Lowe being brought in has hurt the team. So Avila's job is going to be, and now we're going to evaluate to see who he brings in here. How does he evaluate young talent? And the idea is you have to build like the Yankees did. They built all homegrown guys, and then you sprinkled in the veterans once they, were ready to win. Look at the Yankees for the last 15 years.
Let me say this, Doc, really quick. That doesn't always work out. Rebuilding on the fly or just trying to rebuild for the long term, over 5 or 6 years, or 3 to 5 years. Let's just say that. Even 3 years of rebuilding for a franchise and its fan base, that's a killer. That's just horrible to the fan base. It can kill the fan base totally. It makes you lose so many fans. Your attendance goes down so much, with that being said. So you're going to kill away the fan base subsequently, and it could be a long-term rebuild, which never completely pans out. If it doesn't, it just flat out, it explodes in the face of Avila and the Tigers front office brass for going through it and then it not panning out. So they better make the right moves. And now we do start to fully evaluate Avila as a general manager, because we got to see now the goal for him is to cheapen the payroll and to make the Tigers a more cost-effective ball club that can win on the cheap for the time being, and then in the long-term future, 3-4 years from now, can win and win a lot of games and enough to get into World Series contention. That's the key now for the Tigers and their roster construction going forward. The thing is, will they move the right guys? Because there are guys that they probably want to move, such as Vimar, but they're not going to because of his unloadable contract. And JV, who would bring a lot of value in return for him, they are probably not going to deal him either, or Miguel Cabrera, and really shouldn't, because they're legacy Tigers, as I've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast in the past, Doc, to you, when you've brought up JV being dealt, or Miguel Cabrera being dealt. Well, remember, first and foremost, these guys are really guys that should retire as Tigers. They're going to don the Tigers cap when they get elected to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown one day. Verlander is almost there, good enough to be a Hall of Famer. Miguel Cabrera is already Hall of Fame-esque with all of his numbers. So, Mickey, you want him donning that Tigers cap when he retires and is inducted into the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. That's why I think you gotta still keep him. You're going to keep JV. They are once again legacy-esque Tigers that you can't move and that the Tigers won't move.
Oh, I disagree completely. Vito, it's done. JV's time in Detroit's run its course. You need to add talent. And you got younger pitchers that have done some things. Now, if you added Jordan Zimmerman, you're going to pay him big money. That 3 years at $28 million is workable. I think JV showed enough in the 2016 season that you could potentially get some things for him. And if you guys don't, if you want to sell halfway, I want to go all the way with it. That's what the problem was with the Tigers this year, is that they're trying to, and the same thing with the Red Wings. They're trying to half-ass it, where they want to win still and trade off their pieces. I'm like, listen, stamp it. It's done. Call it a rebuild. And do what you got to do to bring in the talent here to win baseball games and to rebuild that minor league system. Vito, you're going to piss off the fan base even more if you're trying to bullshit them. Listen, if you're going to go out there and try to tell me that this Tigers team is a playoff contender with the team that they have, and you maybe add a piece, sure, I can believe that. But this team, managed by Brad Ausmus, going down and slashing payroll, what's the purpose? The idea is to have a sustainable franchise that can get into the postseason year in, year out, and maybe every couple years take a shot at it like the Giants. And what you got to do is you got to go young. You got to add talent. And now you have assets. You can't be like the Pistons and hold on to all your older players until they retire. This is sports, man. And sports is a no-loyalty business. You got to move these guys, and you got to bring back guys that you believe could do some things. You did that when you traded off David Price. You brought in guys that are going to be the future of your team. Now you got to do the same thing with JD, JV. If you can make a miraculous deal for Miggy, you do that too. Don't half-ass it. If you're going to go all the way with it, rebuild, get a lot of young talent and prospects, go with a $140 million payroll, and that doesn't guarantee you're going to lose. Look at the Indians. Look at the KC Royals. There are teams with less spending that have won.
You got to get a little bit lucky. The Royals are built from within, had the small payroll. The Indians kind of do now as well. And they built their clubs in the right manner, I guess, or well enough to build themselves into contending teams that could win a World Series. The Royals did it. They won the 2 straight AL pennants and won the World Series last year. The Indians right now maybe are on the verge of winning a World Series title, the first one in Cleveland since 1948. So these teams have built their teams in the right manner to a certain extent, but you got to get lucky as well. And you mentioned the San Francisco Giants. They've been the even-year team outside of this season now, finally ousted from the playoffs by the Cubbies. That was great to see because I didn't want to see the Giants win again. Because they've been lucky too, remember. They've been good bullpens outside of this year, a good leader of that lineup, really 2 good leaders in Buster Posey and Hunter Pence, good rotation arms such as Madison Bumgarner at the very top. But outside of Bumgarner, I mean, they were relying upon him, a guy like that, his shoulders mightily in the past to get it done. And he just rolled along and beat everybody ahead of him. I mean, the Tigers have an ace like that. They had great starting rotations, but never had the luck on their side to an extreme degree. So they fell short, really, because the baseball gods, I don't know what they thought about the Tigers, but they didn't like the Tigers as much as they liked the San Francisco Giants. When the Giants won in 2010, won in 2012, and beat the Tigers in 2012, and then won in 2014 again against another AL Central club in the KC Royals. So you got to get lucky as well, and that's why I'm saying you risk losing a heavy-duty amount of the fan base by going forward with a full-fledged rebuild. And remember this too, the fan base, the attendance numbers will plummet now rapidly. And can they be recovered? Remember how bad the Tigers got after they won their last division title with Sparky Anderson in 87. They got pretty bad after that. In the 90s, when I was born, 93 and on, they were a miserable ball club. Remember that decade until 03 and a decade plus until 05, they were horrible. And they didn't draw fans. So you risk having the fan base, having the attendance numbers at Comerica Park plummet like they did in the 90s, remember, at Tiger Stadium, and even in the early 2000s when Comerica Park first opened up. So if you don't do a rebuild the right way, which they didn't do then, you can have a lot of losing, Doc, for a long period of time. That's not good, though. Remember that.
Listen, Vito, you can't have it both ways, man. The team has assets. You need to move those assets. And you're discounting the fact that these young guys, you have a lot more, and I know where you're coming from, you have a lot more doubt regarding what the youth of this team looks like. What I'm saying is you have your core, but the core is not JV, JD, and Miguel Cabrera, and Victor Martinez, and Ian Kinsler. The core is going to be built around those young arms, Norris, Boyd, Fulmer. Those are your 3 guys. You can say Kinsler and Upton. You can keep those guys around. You have an offense. You have a framework of a team that can be successful. But what this team looked like in 2016 was a boom or bust team. And what I'm saying is, if you add pieces like you let go of JV for a guy that's going to get you 10 to 15 wins and a hitter. You let go of JD for a couple bullpen arms and a prospect. Now you got a situation where, hey, maybe next year you're in the same spot. You miss out on the postseason. You move on from Brad Ausmus. You get a hot young manager. Then the following year, you start implementing some of these younger guys. Jacoby Jones comes up. Some more guys from the minors. Jimenez comes up to fill a role in the bullpen. In a couple years, we're only looking at moving 2 or 3 guys to potentially add 6 to 8. And those guys, if you hit on even 25% of them, you got 2 or 3 more guys that can be productive. So, and you got to remember, this was a team that was, 12 games over 500 and did some things. So I believe that your thinking is a little bit more pessimistic, whereas I'm a little bit more hopeful where we're starting from. And I think if you move these pieces, you move farther along. And your point is, if we make these moves, they'll be further back. And it
will be for a long, sustained period of time, perhaps, too.
I disagree. My point of view is you make these moves, you stay at the same level, and maybe take an inch or 2 closer with less payroll. I believe that if you hit on a couple guys, if you can add 6 players and you pick up 2 that are productive, now you're in business. If those three guys, the young starters, progress. That's what you got to do, and you got to hope now that you're going to roll the dice that these starting pitchers are going to progress. And this is now a big key, what Avila is thinking about these three young arms, because if that's the case, then he'll make the move for JV. If he doesn't have confidence, then you might just roll out one more year of JV, Zimmerman, Norris, Boyd, and Fulmer, and you take your chances and you trade JV and Upton.
See, I do believe
you trade Justin Upton and JD Martinez.
Okay. See, I do believe those three arms that you noted, as in Daniel Norris, Michael Fulmer, and Matt Boyd, even can progress. And that's why you don't rebuild. If anything, you retool. This team, the writing on the wall is that their window isn't extremely open anymore. And now with the words said by what Avila said to the media on Tuesday, it sounds like, it's rapidly closing. They're going to go into this full-fledged rebuild mode. My point is, though, with those three arms progressing, taking another step forward or two steps forward in 2017, with JV as your ace at the top of that rotation, and those three guys supporting the rest of the rotation, really anchoring the middle of it to a large extent, and having Jordan Zimmerman rebound, be more healthy next year. So a more effective Jordan Zimmerman, a same kind of JV, a Michael Fulmer that takes another step, a Daniel Norris that takes another step, a Matt Boyd that can take at least a small step forward in 2017. That's a good 1 through 5 right there that the Tigers have to build upon, to go into 2017 and try to win. So I'm saying, if you added some pieces, such as to the bullpen, revamped that to a large extent, instead of full-fledged rebuilding, you could have a legitimate shot at building a contender, building a winner in 2017. So I think they're just, I told you about risking losing the fan base to an extreme extent, but I think they're also being too drastic with a full-fledged rebuild if it does truly occur. I don't think it's necessary, nor will it be worthwhile for the Tigers in the long haul. I think the results of it will prove that the Tigers and Avila made a mistake, and it will cost Avila his job. If this rebuild of the Tigers does last more than 3 years, and there's no significant productive results in the win column for the Tigers after, let's say, 3 years, maybe 4 at the longest, well, then Avila's job is not only on the line, he's gone. He's gone as a Tigers GM, in my opinion. If this rebuild doesn't lead, once again, to fruitful results within about a 3 to 4 year period. So it can't be a long-term rebuild in Motown, because the fans will bail out, and trust me, the attendance numbers will suffer because of it too, big time.
Okay, so how do you see this working for Avila? How do you put yourself in his mindset, knowing that potentially the payroll is going to be slashed? You got to get younger. What do you think is the best approach for Avila to take? Do you think just making a couple drastic moves at the bullpen? Do you think maybe adding a couple left-handed bats, improving the defense in the outfield? Where do you think is prime target A, that if he got it, you would say, okay, we're moving in the right direction? What's prime target A for this Detroit Tigers team?
Well, you trade Kinsler. You get younger at second base and get cheaper at second base for the long term. So you can take a downgrade at second base and upgrade the pen and still be a contender or competitive enough in 2017 to compete. I know people don't want to hear it, but to compete for at least one of the 2 AL wildcard spots, which isn't great, isn't what you want to hear. It's not really the way in which you reach a World Series and win a World Series. But it's been done for wildcard teams. And I think with the rotation being good 1 through 5 next year, if it's healthy, and those youngsters are effective once again, and even better perhaps, such as Daniel Norris over a full season and Matt Boyd over a full season in the Tigers rotation, well, then the Tigers can actually take a step forward as a franchise too, even with downgrading at second base by dealing Ian Kinsler and getting younger at that position and cheaper subsequently. So I would look to deal Ian Kinsler. His value is sky high, might never be as high as it is now, so his contract is still movable. So you go out there, if you're Avila, if I was him right now in his mightily big shoes, well, bigger than mine at least, I'll say that much. So I would deal Ian Kinsler to start off, and I would look to upgrade the bullpen on the cheap, which pretty much gets rid of the chance of the Tigers signing Aroldis Chapman. He is no longer in the equation for the Tigers this offseason, and he really wasn't. Anyways, from the start, he was a long shot, to say the least. So moving on from him, you upgrade now your pen, the middle innings especially, on the cheap. And then you have a guy like maybe Bruce Rondon, your boy Rondon, take a step forward. You call up Joe Jimenez, maybe even from the start of the season in 2017, and maybe he's good in the middle innings right away. So you can upgrade on the cheap there with the pen, take a little downgrade at second base, and still be good. But that would be without dealing JD Martinez, who looks like he's the big fish. He's the guy that they're looking to deal because you can reap the benefits the most by dealing JD. And you're not going to just go deal him and get 2 bullpen pieces and a prospect. You're going to you're going to request a starting arm for the future. Guys that can play maybe second base or shortstop or center field for the future. Because they could really use the position players, upgrade that in their farm system big time. So that's where I would definitely try to get younger, and as well as whenever you have the chance to get a young starting arm that can be a bona fide ace caliber arm, or even number 2 or number 3 for your rotation for a long time, you go out and you get that player as well. So I would say I think the Tigers are leaving it open, the door open for trading JD Martinez if the right deal comes, hits them in the face, and I think it will. I think they'll get what they want, and I would say if you get a really good starting arm or two, you're probably going to deal JD. And then also if you get position players, some nice position players for up the middle, second base, shortstop, center field. So those combination of players, I think, is what the Tigers are looking for in a deal for JD Martinez. And that's how they would definitely pull the trigger on a JD Martinez deal, in my opinion. So I see them, they're probably more likely, Doc, sad but true, to deal JD because he is the biggest fish. Now, if I was in Alex Avila's shoes, I would deal Ian Kinsler and maybe make, a few minor upgrades then too to help your team be at least competitive in 2017. But I get your point. At the same time, you have been playing devil's advocate, and you brought it up at the trade deadline, that they should just rebuild fully, which means dealing JV, dealing Miguel Cabrera, because you get the most bang for your buck, because those are big fishes, big item guys that will give you a lot in return, a lot of youth as well, to upgrade, the lineup for the future, the bullpen perhaps, rotation for the future. My opinion, though, my take is, and you got it, I think everybody has it by now, it's just that I think if they kept their rotation the way it is, and not even upgraded their lineup, and maybe not even their bench to a large extent, but if they upgraded their bullpen and kept the rotation intact, if those guys then that are in that rotation took steps forward in 2017, they could actually have a contender. And that's why I think the rebuild is premature.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, unfortunately, the Tigers have decided that the payroll, that they've been operating at a loss for far too long. There are some people that are out there that are arguing that, hey, even paying the payroll tax is not really, that significant. But to that, I argue, listen, when it's your money, it's hard to operate at a loss. And when you're losing money, it's hard if you're any businessman at all. So whether you're a billionaire or not, when you take a loss on an entity, you want to run a profitable sports business. Most people do. So I can agree that if the books say that the Tigers have been losing money year in and year out for the last couple of years, you can't keep throwing good money after bad because you have to be realistic. I knew it 3 years ago.
So you knew it way too prematurely, though. The writing wasn't on the wall then.
Oh, I knew it.
You just overreacted. You overreacted, I think, as a fan.
No,
who flies off the handle. You don't think so?
No, not at all.
Okay.
If the Tigers had employed me 3 years ago, they saved $600 million, and they would have done this.
$600 million exact? Is that an exact figure now?
Approximately.
I know. I'm joking with you.
At least, because they spent a ton of money in the last 3 years, and they lost money. I would have been like, hey, hold on a second. If this is the direction, then I would have invested heavily in 2013, 2014, maybe up it to 250, take one final shot, and go for it. After that first run, I don't hire Brad Ausmus with that team. I hire somebody else, or I make that move beginning in 2013, and now we're starting to see the team in a different spot. That's what we said back in 2013 when they hired Brad Ausmus. This is not the right fit. This is not going to turn out well at all. We knew this was coming, yet the Tigers tried and threw it out there. Now we're looking back in hindsight, but at the time, you don't hire a rookie manager to run a team that's going to win the World Series. If that's the case, they should have known this. They knew the money was running out. They just tried to make an effort these last couple years to see if they could throw shit on the wall and see if it stuck. Unfortunately, it didn't. Now the money's dried up. Now you got to rebuild. Unfortunately, they gambled. What the Tigers did was gamble, and they gambled too late. They came up snake eyes.
They should have won. They should have won, though, in 2013, Jim Leyland's last year. They missed their chance. The Red Sox got hot. Were the team of destiny. So in the Tigers' defense, they had good quality players. Dave Dombrowski built a good enough team to win it all. Just didn't happen. And I just think it's still too premature to fully rebuild. I'm not for the full rebuild because I get your point once again with saving money right now. Because you can cut payroll by dealing players. So you can even try to win on the cheap that way by dealing. But if you do a full rebuild, okay, you're gonna save a lot of money. I get that. So that ball club as a whole, as a business is going to save money, which means it's reaping benefits big time because you want to save money rather than spend an overload amount, a lavish amount of money. So they are going to save money. But in the long-term future, I'm telling you, they're not going to be really profitizing and making money because they're going to lose the fan base extremely. Remember when Comerica Park first opened and in the latter years of Tiger Stadium's existence, nobody was showing up. They were working at a loss then, remember, too, financially. So remember that long-term, they're going to lose a lot of money by doing this, Doc.
Winning cures all. If you can get...
yeah, but they got to win. Remember, if we're rebuilding, they're not winning. They're losing a lot. If you lose a lot, fans aren't showing up. Fans aren't buying gear, aren't buying tickets, aren't buying concessions, aren't buying anything Tigers related. That happened, remember, in the latter years of Tiger Stadium's existence and in the very beginning of Comerica Park's existence. Trust me, I witnessed it. I bet you did too. Going to those games, remember how it was? Nobody was there.
Yeah.
They weren't making money.
I remember
they were losing money.
I remember a game specifically where it was a 7:30 game, and unfortunately we gave the usher some grief because we were in the outfield, that whole section where home runs are, right? And we were sitting toward the back, maybe 15, 20 rows back. There's nobody, Vito, nobody 15 rows in front of us. It was empty. It was two schlubs watching a baseball game in an empty Comerica Park. And so what do? We moved up 3 rows. Or no, we moved up way up to the front, like the 8th row, 7th row. Vito, there was nobody around us. So this poor old usher comes up to us and is like, "Can I see your tickets, please?" And I'm like, "Sir, there's nobody around. Do you care?" He's like, "Can I see your tickets, please?" I said,
"Come on." Yeah.
I said, "No." And he kind of looked at me funny. And I said, Look around. We're the only people here. So we're sitting right here. He looked at us and he just walked away. But it was a situation where, yeah, I remember the bad times. I remember the seasons.
They were horrible. They weren't just bad. They were utterly bad.
I'm going to count on Al Avila to find a competitive ball club. And if you readjust your expectations and you have some good must-see talent, Michael Fulmer is going to be box office. I really believe that. That guy can go out there and have a complete game, no-hitter, perfect game scenario if he gets it right. So that guy's box office. You could still have a team that can match the baseball a little bit. If people change their expectations and they bring in and they do this retooling in the right way.
Is it retooling or rebuilding? Remember, we fought with that term last week on the podcast, or 2 weeks ago, I think now, actually.
Well,
as well.
In 2017, the attendance is going to be bad. We know
it
that.
Is. We know that. It's going to take a major hit.
I'm saying when we finally get to assess what they've done with this in 2 years or 3 years, I'll say that it might be further along. If you have hope that Al Avila picks the right pieces and makes the right moves. That's what we're going to say. We're going to have to observe. And the first move that he said was a real deflator. That's not going to put no asses in the seats. We'll talk about that after this break, because when I saw the news of who they're looking to bring back, I was like, yeah, it's as a name from the past. We'll talk about it after a break.
Absolutely. We'll be right back here on episode 62 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Hey guys, it's Vito Chirco from Top Cat Sales in downtown Royal Oak. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or your corporation? Well, if so, then look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. So get your organization, your school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, the website is TopCatTeamSales.com. And remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter for the Top Cat Sales Coach of the Week at Team Top Cat. Back here on episode number 62 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, we are getting some text sent in to the Top Cat Sales phone line, Doc, and my buddy, a friend of, the podcast, he listens in. He was on my radio show on campus at Detroit Mercy back in the day as well. Brendan Barcume is his name. Check him out. He's on Twitter, I think at B Barcume. We'll solve that and figure it out. But anyways, he said that, as Al Avila pointed out, the changes are coming, and he thinks that JD will be the first one to be shipped out, followed by my man, the guy that I think should be dealt first and foremost, in Ian Kinsler. So Kinsler, I think, should be dealt first, and it sounds like, though, JD might be the first guy dealt because he is the biggest fish. Now, do you think these orders, Doc, bringing Doc back in here into the fray, do you think these orders to rebuild or to cheapen the payroll are being directed by Mr. I as in Mike Ilitch or his son, Chris Ilitch? It sounds like it's Chris, right?
Exactly. And what's interesting is Mr. Al Avila didn't invite the entire media. He had a select few there, and they always bring up Mr. Ilitch, and a lot of people have mentioned that they should ask which Mr. Ilitch is it that's controlling this situation, and it looks like, just based upon pattern, that it's Chris Ilitch taking over, and this is a new era. When you have other ideas as well, it's super tough when the owners of the Tigers also own the Red Wings, and their attentions might be diverted and things like that. So it'll be very important for the organization really to kind of, you know what, Vito, it's very interesting. I think that what the Tigers got to do is they really got to come out and inform these fans what they're doing, because there's a lot of questions as to the direction of this team. Are they rebuilding? Are they retooling? Who's in charge of the organization? What is the direction of this team? So it's going to be very important for management, not just Al Avila, because obviously he's the general manager. His job is to come out and talk about what the future is, but the organization to come out and let us know, let the fan base know what's the direction of this team, because, you know, I think there's a lot of people teetering. When you've seen the attendance drop, you have a lot of people that have a lot of questions. The confidence right now in the Detroit Tigers is pretty low, and it might be at an all-time low, especially for the last decade. The confidence in the Tigers is shaken, and they need someone to come out and kind of tell us what the future direction of the squad is going to look like. And Al Avila started the process of doing it, but I don't know if he did a good enough job to convince me what the plans are for this team.
Well, and now the thing is, too, you know, they have these expiring contracts, and a guy like Maben, who is rumored to be a guy they might pick up the option of and then just deal him because they want to gain some assets for the future, to get younger, get cheaper. So he's a candidate to be shipped out from Motown as well. And it sounds like they're moving on from Jared Saltalamacchia, as Tony Paul pointed out on Twitter, and you segged into that segment earlier before the commercial break. And, Doc, it sounds like now Al Avila's boy, Alex Avila, is coming back to Motown to be the backup catcher, or at least there's a strong possibility. Obviously, well, there's the nepotism you could attach it to the reason for why they're bringing in Alex Avila to return to Motown. But there is some good legitimacy, I think, as well involved with the potential move for Alex Avila. You can get him on the cheap. Aren't they saving? They're trying to save money right now, so you save money by getting him in here in Motown. He can't get a lot of money, won't be worth a lot of money on the open market, and he's been a Tiger before. And a quality starter at one point, quality backup at least, and a better on-base percentage guy, much better than Jared Saltalamacchia. And when you save money, you kind of deploy Moneyball. What is important in the Moneyball philosophy of building a team? It is
value
at a low rate, low amount of salary per player, and with good on-base percentage ball players. Alex Avila, much better than Jared Saltalamacchia in that regard. Doc, I want to get your thoughts now. And what do you think about the potential of bringing Alex Avila back in to be the backup catcher?
You know, the catcher situation is one that, you know, you're looking for someone to adequately back up James McCann, who's obviously strong defensively, but at the catcher position, you need a solid backup. Jared Saltalamacchia provided heroics and a lot of key hits, but unfortunately his batting average was just way below average, and you need a guy to kind of step it up a little bit offensively. Jared would hit some massive home runs at important times, but when he was out there when McCann was hurt or when McCann was struggling, he just didn't do enough, and you could upgrade at that position. But yeah, obviously you know Alex Avila. It's a move that you go, well, why did you let him go in the first place? Just, you know, if you were going to consider bringing him back, why you let him go? Just extend him out and make him a fair offer. I think he would have took less money, obviously, to stay in Detroit. So it's just one of those things where you're not looking too much or too seriously at the backup catcher position. What I need to know is who the hell is going to be talking to James McCann to get his ass in gear offensively, because defensively, he's on point. He's able to kind of manage the opponent's run game. He calls a good game. That's fine. That's on point. But offensively, he's got to take the next step. And he was able to make small adjustments throughout the year, and he got better. But he's got to take a massive step forward in the next year. Otherwise, you got to look at a starting catcher, a la Jonathan Lucroy, a guy that can actually hit the baseball at a higher clip. Because remember, you can't have a dip at every position if you're going to trade off a J.D. Martinez. You can't have a dip, and especially if you let go of Cameron Maben. You're going to need guys like Castellanos and James McCann to fill in that role, because I'm just fascinated to see what the first couple moves are going to be, because that'll kind of help us to see where this organization is headed. But if the first move is J.D. Martinez, you know that Nick Castellanos is going to have to step up, and you know that James McCann has to be a contributor. You know it.
But look at what the Indians are doing on the cheap at the catcher position. Without getting Jonathan Lucroy, remember, he used his veto to not get dealt to the Indians and got dealt to the Rangers instead. The Rangers are out of the playoffs already. Indians are still succeeding at a high rate, at a rate that you like because you picked the Indians now to make the World Series and to win it all. Is that true? Or at least to the Fall Classic. I know you've said this to Jason Jarvie on the Motor City Sports Rant, and you guys have debated the merit of it, of whether or not you actually picked the Indians to also win the Fall Classic. But anyways, I'll get you on that in a second. The point is that Roberto Perez's catcher for the Indians is a guy not making a lot of money, not a great all-star caliber catcher. They're winning with him. He's come up with some timely hits for the Tribe, and they keep winning. Forget about the catcher position. But really, it comes down to their lineup getting timely hits and to their bullpen being highly utilized and coming in and getting the job done at a highly efficient rate. And Andrew Miller putting out all the fires. I mean, how good has he been? The Tigers almost had him, remember, going into the 2014 postseason. And who got him instead? The Orioles, who knocked the Tigers out of the playoffs the last time they made it in 2014. And he's been the difference maker. He might be the reason why the Indians make it all the way to the Fall Classic right now, as the Blue Jays, my Toronto Blue Jays, are on the verge of elimination, and their bats have gone cold, have gone silent. So it tells you right there that even if you have a lineup full of all-stars or mashers, big-time home run hitters and run producers, does not mean anything when it comes to October. What matters the most is really just getting the timely hits, and then you're pitching. Having an ace like Kluber. The Tigers have that in Justin Verlander. But the bullpen is the difference maker. That's the difference between the Indians and the Tigers. It's why the Indians won 14 games out of 18 games against the Tigers in 2016. And the catcher position, as you said, it's not that valuable of an asset, the backup position, or even the starting catcher position, which now it comes to the discussion about James McCann. Will he get his act together? He needs to. The thing is, who will right him offensively? Is there a way to rectify his offensive ways? I don't know. I think he might be this kind of a low-hitting, a small contact catcher who is more defensive strong than offensively strong. And I think we're seeing that more and more now with James McCann. And we have to envision that McCann will be that going forward as well for the Tigers if he is their everyday starting catcher going forward, which he will be. We know that much. He will be in 2017. But outside of or past 2017, will he be the starting catcher? Well, the thing that has to happen first is what you pointed out already, Doc, which you eloquently did, and that he has to start hitting. He has to start hitting at a more consistent rate, at least hitting for contact more efficiently, maybe hitting around 250. If he did that year to year and was also the mechanic that he is, throwing out runners at a premium rate, then we wouldn't lose too much of value with him starting full-time at catcher. Thing is, like I said, I don't view him as an everyday starting catcher because of his offensive weaknesses. I don't think he's good enough. And even his plate discipline, if you're building a team full of good on-base percentage guys, it is not James McCann that you want as your starting catcher, unless he improves upon that. And I think he'll have to show a lot in 2017 to merit or to warrant him receiving the starting position again in 2018, when the Tigers' roster could look completely different with the new manager as well.
Okay, so your thought is, hey, it's not a bad addition to get Alex Avila back. He can do a serviceable job on the cheap. So is there anybody else out there that has caught your attention? Maybe someone in the minors that the Tigers are potentially bringing along? I think I heard a name. It's not coming to me at the top of my head right now. Somebody that is in the organization, maybe at the AA, AAA level, that could come in here and do some things. It's just unfortunate that that's the kind of, Alex Avila, really? It doesn't do much for me.
Doesn't excite you. It doesn't get you going on a Saturday morning, on a Monday morning, when you have to go into work. It doesn't at all, the Alex Avila name. But he's a solid backup catcher. Will he stay healthy, though? Key with him is staying healthy, much more than really him, producing with good OBP numbers. Specifically, it's more about his health, long-term health. He's been concussed, has battled concussion issues for how many years straight now, as he did with the Tigers for a long time. This past season was injury-prone with the White Sox. But I think he's leaving the south side of Chicago to return to Motown, whether it be good or bad in the eyes of many Tigers fans.
Okay, a fan on our Twitter page, at Detroit Podcast, Matt Gensman gets in. He says, I think it's a transition year next year. We're stuck with Pelfrey, Sanchez, and Lowe for 1 year. Move a couple of the stars that have value. So that brings me to a point that's also very interesting in that you got some guys that have contracts that you really can't move, and they stink. You got Pelfrey, who might be in the rotation at the 4 or 5 spot. You got Sanchez, who maybe is a candidate you move, either or, Pelfrey or Sanchez. So any move that you make might be hindered by the fact you got these contracts that are terrible that you got to figure out what to do with. Do you see these 3 guys as being the detriment to the Tigers in 2017? I mean, look at these contracts. Pelfrey, another year. Sanchez, Mark Lowe. It's a bigger number than the Tigers would like in terms of the money that they're paying these guys, and their production doesn't seem to match anywhere near the money we're paying them.
I don't know if they're a detriment to the ball club and what it wants to do, what it plans on doing in 2017, because as much as they want to get cheaper, they're not going to be fully trying to win, it sounds like. So, hey, who cares if they really aren't that good and you have to use them in the rotation every fifth day? But I don't think Pelfrey or Sanchez will be utilized as a fifth starter, and shouldn't be. Neither of them should be. Neither should be in 2017, used in the rotation every fifth day. Neither are effective enough anymore. And really, the only guy I want to use maybe in 2017 is Anibal Sanchez out of the bullpen, and maybe a guy like Buck Farmer. But we're talking about the high money guys, right, that are not efficient anymore. Pelfrey, I would love to get him a bus and send him all the way to some place where he can't ever come back to Motown to be a part of the Tigers roster. He is so unvaluable, brings nothing of worth, just like Danny Worthless, right, as we called him. But a guy like that, I mean, a guy that just brings no value, that is Mike Pelfrey. All those bad arms that the Tigers had for so many years when they were a middling ball club in the early 2000s, mid to late 90s, that is Mike Pelfrey. You know, that is him. He is one of those bad arms reincarnated. So Pelfrey has no room on this roster. There's no rhyme or reason to keep him outside of his big salary, which was a ludicrous amount of money to give to Mike Pelfrey from the get-go by Al Avila. Al Avila, that was one of his bad decisions. And now it's going to hurt the payroll. It's a reason why they have to move guys that are more valuable, that will be making more money in the future because they're more valuable than Mike Pelfrey, such as JD Martinez. It really, he becomes a victim of the payroll issues for the Tigers and of the fact that the Tigers want to reduce the payroll to a large extent. Because you really can't move. You can't get rid of Mike Pelfrey's contract. You just got to hope that 2017 goes really quick so his contract runs out very quickly. It will at the end of the 2017 campaign, and they rid themselves of that bad contract of Mike Pelfrey. But I would try to do something with him now. Even buy him out, get rid of him, so you never see him again. Anibal Sanchez, I think you might have to keep, and you just deal with it. I think you deal with his contract, his woes, because you put him in the bullpen where he's seen at a less amount. So that's what I would do. I would try to get rid of one of the two. I would get rid of Mike Pelfrey over Anibal, even though, remember, Anibal is making more money, too. So there is that to take into account as well. And you had mentioned the Tigers looking within their farm system for somebody that is younger and much cheaper, with that being said. Well, what they could do, Eric Ibar is an expiring contract. He's not coming back, probably. Casey McGee, they don't want him back. He's an expiring contract, so he's not coming back. You have Dixon Machado. He could replace Ian Kinsler as well, or Iglesias if you deal him. And really, when it comes to the two of those guys, Kinsler and Jose Iglesias, well, who are you going to move that gives you the most bang for your buck? Well, it would be moving Ian Kinsler once again. And that's why I keep saying you move him. And then you have that internal replacement, who might not be the greatest replacement in the world. But you save some money for the time being in a year of transition. So I think it will be a year of where they transition to perhaps in 2018 when they full-fledged rebuild. So I think for the time being, you could afford losing some value at second base and going with the younger, cheaper option in Dixon Machado, who might not be the long-term solution at second base, but the wise solution when you're in the mode of retooling, when you go into and subsequently endure through a transition year. That's when you go to a guy like Dixon Machado, and that's a way in which you save money, too, as a whole.
All right, Vito, it's tough as a fan sitting here to look at the Tigers when we see the Red Wings as well going through kind of a rebuild mode. The Detroit Tigers, man, it's just one of those things where you look at the past 10 years, they were able to revitalize baseball in town. As we talked about, there were so many lean years, but I can't help but feeling like it's a failure these past 10 years. But they did provide a lot of great memories for the fans and things like that. But ultimately, when you judge it, you go, there was no ring. And it's going to be a situation where you have to look to the next wave of stars, and we got to be patient in that the future of the ball club in the next couple years is going to be a little bit leaner. The expectation has to change, and it just stinks because it didn't align properly in terms of when you could have got the most value for this squad. I think that after the Jim Leyland era, once you lost that series versus Boston, that should have been it. You should have really made the conscious effort, because now you're hearing the talk that, hey, we've been operating at a loss. We've been really overextending ourselves.
And now it's almost where we don't want to hear that. Those excuses, right? Thrown out there by the front office, by Al Avila. It's like, that's pitiful crap right now. We don't want to hear it, go through it, because you're saying, kind of, if you were smart, Avila, if you were smart as a front office, Tigers, you would have started this retooling at least, maybe even a rebuild mode much earlier on, is what your point is. And I get that, because you could have started cutting costs back then and maybe been in a better position by now to win even more, right, at a higher rate going into 2017. But they're not built now totally in really either. They're in between. They're really in that transition mode big time. And you got to really sign some big-time bullpen pieces now. Add maybe a shortstop that can hit better if you want to really go all in, which you're not going to do. And if you want to go completely to cut your costs, if you're totally in that mode, well, like you said, you full-fledged rebuild then. You deal anybody that's valuable. So I know what you're saying, what you said in this podcast. Do one or the other, right? Don't be in between, because they're already in that transition mode. And they are, because they didn't do the cutting of costs earlier on when they could have, maybe should have, in your opinion at least. And I think other Tigers fans, Doc, are starting to see that and starting to say that as well. And I don't know if they actually thought that back when you did, but I have to give you that much credit. So you deserve some props there, Doc, for thinking that back then when it could have fast-forwarded all that they're going through now and cutting costs and trying to get younger.
And then you top it off with, look what's going on at Cleveland. You said it yourself. The way that managers are using their bullpen is much more aggressive. They're using guys in different spots. Look at what the Indians are doing. 24 and 2/3 innings for that bullpen with an ERA of 1.45, 36 Ks. Andrew Miller, 9 innings pitch, 19 strikeouts with a 0.00 ERA. And you got a situation where in Game 3 of their matchup versus the Blue Jays, their starting pitcher, Trevor Bauer, the individual that was plunking the Tigers left and right, he's out there on the mound, and he had a cut from a drone tinkering around with some gadget or so, and he's out there, and by the third or fourth pitch, he's bleeding heavily.
Yeah.
And the manager goes out there, and you see him visibly laughing on the mound. And they asked him about it on Tuesday, and people were wondering, the media was curious, what were you thinking when you were going out to the mound about to pull your starter in a key Game 3 versus Toronto? And he was like, man, I looked up to the board and I saw that the 50-50 was like 85 grand. I wanted to get in on the action. That's what Tito was thinking at the time. Calm, cool, and collected. You know why? Because he had his backup plan already. The next guy up that was going to pitch was going to come in either the 3rd, 5th, 7th inning. He knew the next guy up, no matter what it was going to be. And he had a plan set. So he goes out there in that pressure moment. He's joking it up, laughing. And I believe, the biggest factor resulting in why the Indians are playing so well and why they're looking like a better team is they have one of the best managers in baseball right now in Terry Francona. And I think you can also get exponentially better if you have a manager that is really world-class and professional. You can move this along. So whether, unfortunately, it's not really cool to wish your team to stink, but I would say if 1 year the Tigers could just stink and bottom out, I'll take it in 2017. If it means moving on from Ausmus and getting a better manager, so their eyes and ears better be open as an organization as to who's out there that can be the next Terry Francona, because he's the class of the division, and with him there, they're going to be a solid team. And look how awesome that is. He's out there relaxed, and everybody's saying it. His performance in Game 3 in terms of his managerial style and expertise and the decisions that he was making, on point. And that's what you need. You need a strong manager that can overcome a lot of different things. You think that the Cubs would be in the World Series hunt right now if Joe Madden was not manning that dugout? No, nobody thinks that. That's a guy that can go to a single place and turn it around and have some success. That's what the Tigers needed to do, and that's probably the biggest mistake, 1 and 1A, was not changing managers at the right time, or not adding the right manager when they hired after Jim Leland, and 2, not maybe extending this run out 2 or 3 years too long. That's a mistake. You can't repeat it. Now you have to correct it, and a stat was brought up on Tuesday that was devastating, is that if the Indians win this year, every single team in the Central would have won a World Series since 1984 besides the Tigers. Every one of the teams in the division. That would be the ultimate slap in the face. And just sitting here, Vito, it's just tough because you and I, we love the Tigers. We want to see them do well. But unfortunately, we're right smack dab at square one, the starting point.
In a state of flux. And they could have expedited, right, this process by moving on from guys way long ago. A few years ago, at least, maybe after Leland left town, right, when he retired. And they didn't hire the right manager. We know that much. And then Francona, the Indians, they hired the right manager. a guy that can help the team win when the team's in position to win, which guess what? They are, but he even makes that club work better, more efficiently. He makes the team look better as a whole because of his great managing ability. He knows how to strategize, how to deploy his bullpen arms in the right spots. And in so many words, you know, Doc, how some people know how to work a room? Terry Francona knows how to work a pitching staff, knows how to work a bullpen. And what he did in Game 3 against the Blue Jays to allow his team to win that game, to be first in position to win that game, and then to come out with the victory in Game 3, to go up 3-0 against the Blue Jays. In Toronto, too, at the Rogers Center. That's a tough place to play in. And he pulled it out because of what he did with the utilization of his arms. Seeing Trevor Bauer, having to pull him because of the blood. He had to pull him. And then the way in which he utilized his arms in any spot. He used them early on. Some good late inning guys. He just used them early on because you know what? To him, it doesn't matter what spot he throws out his guys in because they're always ready. They're in prime condition to pitch in any kind of spot, any kind of role out of the Indians' bullpen, which means in any inning, regardless of what the inning or what the situation may be, he knows he can count upon his guys. He's put that confidence in each and every single one of his bullpen arms. And that's why they can come out and do what they do, being productive, being effective in any kind of spot in a ball game. And it panned out in the Indians' favor in Game 3 because of that confidence which Francona has instilled in each of his bullpen arms. And those arms are good, maybe of a higher caliber than the Tigers' arms too, than their middle inning guys. And that's where the breakdown in the Tigers' pen really comes down to. It is the breakdown, the struggles of their middle inning guys, which the Indians haven't had all year long. And then they got a guy like Cody Allen who can be the closer, has been, given that role, but also comes in the 7th inning. Francona used his closer in the 7th inning to get vital outs, to get the job done in a spot where he deemed to be high leverage. So he said his closer, he's the ace reliever along with Andrew Miller in the Indians bullpen, so you can use Cody Allen at any spot. And guess what? He did so by using Allen in the 7th inning in Game 3. And guess what? Because of how he used his bullpen arms after Bauer had to step out early, because of that, the Indians came out on top in Game 3 and now have, as I said, a huge 3-0 series lead against the Blue Jays. And it looks like, they're going to the World Series. The Indians are, and all bets are off once you get to the Fall Classic, even if they have to play the mightily tough Chicago Cubs, who have all the wins. They won 100-plus games, but you never know. And they still got to get to the Fall Classic. Could be the Dodgers. It could be the Dodgers at this point, and largely because of Clayton Kershaw and what he's done in that series, pitching against the Cubs, getting it done in his start, and what he can do going forward. We saw him have a huge impact in the NLDS as well, and helping the Dodgers win that series. So I'm just saying it could end up being the Dodgers with the series tied up at 1 game apiece, and it's the MLB postseason. We've seen this happen before, where one big arm at the top of a rotation can help a team reach the Fall Classic and even win it all. So, and their bullpen is pretty good too. And Dave Roberts, I got to bring this up really quick, Doc, not to go on a tirade here or a tangent, but Dave Roberts also has utilized his bullpen very efficiently, putting his closer in, Jansen in spots before the 9th inning as well, but in what can be deemed, what is termed as high leverage situations, stuff that Brad Ausmus refused to do much of 2016, hurting his ball club. So much because of that, because he stuck to defined roles for each of his bullpen arms in the late innings. Instead of using those guys in other spots that were high leverage situations, he had to use K-Rod in the 9th, only the 9th, maybe for a 4-out save here and there. Never to start the 7th inning. Never would he have thought of it. Never did he utilize him in the 7th inning. And that's where his flaws come out for Brad Ausmus. And you can pinpoint some of the Tigers' struggles to him because of that. When you see the magic that Terry Francona is working with the Indians pitching staff and what Dave Roberts has done with the Dodgers bullpen, two teams that are, in Ausmus's defense, are better equipped with bullpen arms. But still, the way in which they use their arms helps their respective teams win a lot more than Brad Ausmus in the way that he utilizes his arms. And with that being said, he damaged the Tigers' chances at times because of how he deployed his bullpen arms. Stuff that Francona won't do to his ball club, and stuff that Dave Roberts has proven in the postseason not to do to his ball club. And it's a reason why, like I said, it might be the Dodgers and Indians in the Fall Classic. Sorry to you Cubbies fans out there, but it might actually be the Dodgers getting in instead of the Cubs.
Ooh, okay. It'll be interesting to see next week what we're looking at here. I'm going to be curious to see if the Indians wrap it up quickly because it's looking like the series, the Cubs and Dodgers, is going to go long. And will that affect the Indians like it did the Tigers back in the day when they had the time off? Their offense went completely dead. The Tigers' defense was, absent, and it really affected them versus the Cardinals and versus the Giants as well. It'll be interesting to see if the Indians, when, inevitably they close out the series, how they handle the layoff. But, man, Vito, it's tough. It's tough being a Tigers fan right now because you're looking at it, and it's at the beginning phases, but we're realizing that, maybe it's time for a retrospective in the last decade of what has actually happened and how we got here. But if you look on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, Adam from Doc and Jock, he wrote about it that the Tigers couldn't sustain that payroll 3-4 years ago. He wrote about it, and he said that this payroll is, not going to be long, so the window is going to be ever so tight. And if they didn't capitalize, he wrote the article before they hired Brad Ausmus even.
Look at you guys.
We knew it was going to come.
Yeah, you guys are just these mind readers. No, predictors of the future. Hugely successful prognosticators that knew more than the Tigers should have known back then.
And now that we're fact checkers and people want to go back and look.
You can fact check it. It's true, right? It's all true. It's all out there.
It's all documented on our YouTube page. Go to DetroitSportsPodcast.com, click the YouTube button. Every podcast of value since around November 2013 is archived, and you can go back and see our thoughts when they hired Caldwell, when they hired Brad Ausmus, when Fielder made those unfortunate comments, things like that. You can get our reactions to some important series, and that's how it goes, brother.
And, Doc, you know what? The Tigers have sabotaged the Tigers' chances of winning in 2017 by bringing back Brad Ausmus, too. I will say that much. They give themselves no shot of winning, almost. A hugely lessened shot of winning, regardless of other roster moves that they make. But with the roster moves that are coming now, it sounds like, with somewhat of a rebuild to come in the offseason, and Brad Ausmus coming back, they sabotage the Tigers fan base. They really have, because they have given the Tigers legitimately no shot by bringing back specifically Brad Ausmus, that is. So I'm just saying, you can tell, too, with that being said, Mr. I is not calling the shots big time anymore. Because I think he saw the writing on the wall when he wanted Jim Leyland to come back. It sounded like early on in 2016 when they went on that big losing streak and they wanted Ausmus gone. Well, he would have made that move by himself. He didn't like him. I don't think he does like him. I think he saw the negative effects of a Brad Ausmus managed ball club. And they know, everybody knows, Avila knows that going into 2017, Brad Ausmus does not give the Tigers the best shot to win every single day and enough to make the playoffs. And I don't care if you tell me that Brad Ausmus or Avila or anybody else in the Tigers front office brass. I know that you know as well that Brad Ausmus does not give the ball club a great shot to win in 2017. And that tells me you don't care about winning in 2017, which you pretty much already made clear with your statements on Tuesday about wanting to get younger and getting cheaper as a whole, too.
Second dick.
Yeah, Rod Allen. Hey, eloquently said there. Thank you, Rod, for that. And you know what? I don't think the Indians will suck anything against the Blue Jays Tuesday. I think the Indians get it done with Corey Kluber on the mound. Aaron Sanchez, the youngster for the Blue Jays, great starting pitcher, won 15 games in the regular season. But Kluber, I believe, shuts it down, gets it done on the road in Game 4. And the Indians subsequently, to my dismay, sweep the Blue Jays in the ALCS. And then in the NLCS, I've spoken about Dave Roberts, what he's done highly efficiently with the bullpen. And Clayton Kershaw, his great success in this NLCS round. But I still think the Cubs, you know what? I just can't count them out to the point where I say they're not going to get to the Fall Classic. Now, could the Indians win it all? Yes. But I think the Cubs at least will get still to the Fall Classic because the Dodgers, they're relying so heavily upon the shoulders of Clayton Kershaw. Can he sustain it? In the past, not the best postseason numbers. Now, he's proven, though, he's kind of cementing almost his status as an ace in both the regular season and postseason with his numbers up to this point in this year's postseason. And would be cementing his legacy if they went on a run that led the Dodgers to the World Series and to a World Series title, which they haven't won, by the way, in a long time. So if Clayton Kershaw could lead the Dodgers to that, well, his legacy would almost be set right then and there by helping the Dodgers win the World Series. But my point is, when you're relying upon other guys in that Dodgers rotation, like Rich Hill, who's a veteran but a little bit too old, and he's pitched good in 2016, but going up against Arrieta, I don't care that the Dodgers are in LA. I still think Arrieta, a little bit too good for those Dodgers bats, which are still a little bit inconsistent, as all the bats really have proven to be in this year's postseason, including the Cubbies bats, who have the great lineup, the great youngsters, the MVP in the NL, and Chris Bryant, a great all-star first baseman, and Anthony Rizzo. So many other names that I can just ramble on about right now. And the Indians have some bats as well. And the Blue Jays, all their mashers. But in the postseason, it comes down to timely hits as well. And the Dodgers bats, can they do that? I don't think they will well enough. And I think the Cubbies bats will come alive when they have to, enough at least, to win this series against the Dodgers, Doc.
Okay.
A lot was said there.
A lot was said to digest. If you have any reactions to what Vito said, if you agree, disagree with anything on this podcast, please feel free. Shoot us a message at Detroit Podcast. We read each and every tweet, positive or negative. One of the most interactive Twitter pages in town, and Vito does a good job answering his superfans. How was your trip to Tijuana?
Steve Shimenti, right? I don't always answer his questions, but I know you have something to say here. Bring it up.
Yeah, he was very curious because you have taken a Twitter sabbatical. And people notice when you're on a big network like this and people are aware, they follow you and they gravitate towards your insights. You're not tweeting during the games. We don't know what you're thinking about the moves. Where you been, brother? How come you're going AWOL on Twitter? It's important. You got to realize you have a responsibility that when you go away from Twitter for 5 days, people are wondering. And so I kind of had to let them know that you were in Tijuana.
Tijuana. I was there, hung out with many women, many men, everybody. They all loved me. I was dancing my behind off. And there might be a video leaked. Once again, I'm hoping it's not too outlandish out there that cost me my job. But actually, you know what? My past video on Facebook that we talked about highly in that Facebook Live video, it's gotten a lot of rave reviews. I think I got to keep dancing now. Maybe I got another career.
Oh, okay. So we just need to know that, hey, from time to time, it doesn't have to be a lot, but every few innings, 3 or 4 innings during these games, I know you're watching them.
Are you demanding now this of me? How about you up my pay then?
Okay, well, first of all, if you're going to take Twitter sabbaticals, then you got to let us know that because people are going to miss you. You got to be like, hey, I'm going to be gone for a week. I mean, literally, your last tweet was like 5 days ago.
I'm glad somebody misses me. And really quick to segue into something else really quick before we end today's discussion. Wally Joyner. Will he be missed as the Tigers hitting coach? Completely off topic from Tijuana, but I don't think he will be missed. Inconsistencies to the max all year long. The Tigers.
A lot of people actually were wondering why, the third base coach wasn't let go. Dave Clark. Rich Doobie. What did he do?
I think Doobie did something. How about Fulmer? How about Norris? Doobie should be safe. Verlander had a great season, his best season since when? It's been a long time for Verlander. Could win the Cy Young actually. So Doobie, I think, should have been safe.
You're giving Doobie some credit?
I'm giving the Doobie brothers some credit.
Okay.
Yeah. Now Wally Joyner. How much credit can we give him? I think we give him credit for the Tigers' struggles, right? And that's why, in part, he's not returning. I guess it was pretty mutual, and even maybe more of him not pursuing other opportunities, right? And is that more of just the Tigers being nice about Wally Joyner on his way out, or could it be the truth that he just wants to pursue other opportunities, maybe with a better ball club, or in another capacity with another ball club, and a lesser role that means? And it can be a grind. It's a long season. It's a marathon, 162 games. It can be too much for some people. Too much for beat writers as well. I mean, think about that. Too much for us. We just speak about the same topics ad nauseum. Example, Brad Ausmus, and about how he will sabotage now the team in 2017 as he did in 2016 and 2015 and 2014 as well. So, yeah, you know my opinion about that. You know my opinion, I think, Doc, about the future rebuild, as it sounds like, after the words that were uttered by Alex Avila on Tuesday, and I am in much dismay. And then I got to see what makes me even more somber, more in a bad mood, is the fact that I got to see the Indians succeed. They are succeeding at such a high rate, and they're going to make the World Series. They're on the verge of it, and they might even win it all. And the Tigers had all those years of success of division titles in the AL Central from 2011 to 2014. They made the World Series twice since 06, counting 06, and then 2012. And they lost in just horrible fashions. And then the Royals win it, have to win it. They had a good 2-year stretch, and that's it. They'll probably be middle-of-the-road ball club now in 2017, and they had to win it after their 2-year run. Tigers had a longer run and never got it done. And now it sounds like we're closing the book on them, on their chances of even trying to get to the World Series. And then the Indians are going to get all the way to the World Series. And you got guys like Mike Napoli who keep succeeding for you, and then guys like Miguel Cabrera couldn't come up big like in 2012, or Prince Fielder. I mean, they had some chances, and they threw some chances away. And then they had Vmart, Fielder, and Cabrera in 2013, and still couldn't get it done. And all those aces, and I don't want to sound like sour grapes, but it is pretty true. As a Tigers fan, as Tigers fans, we can sound like that a little bit because now, as they enter into this new mode, into this transition year, and maybe many years of that being the case, well, you got to reflect on what was and on the disappointments as well. And they're closing the door on a chapter in Tigers baseball history that was, to a good extent, disappointing, Doc, because of no World Series title, and now a team in your division might be coming very close to gaining its own World Series title and to ending its own drought, which is much longer and good for those Cleveland fans. But haven't we had enough of Cleveland winning for 1 year? Come on.
Tough times being a Detroit fan of a professional team right now. We got to pin our hopes on the Pistons and Lions and go from there because, unfortunately, we're gonna have to just take a step back, lower our expectations, and maybe what Kenny Holland said might ring true for a lot of organizations. Sometimes lower expectations can be fun.
And I think many Red Wings fans think that he's sabotaged the Red Wings, too. Their chances of winning in their final season at the Joe, 25 straight years of reaching the postseason. The Red Wings are probably not going to make it to the postseason in the final season, the farewell season at the Joe. How sad is that to you, Red Wings fans? By the way, I am, too, just not as big of one as you and others on this very podcast network. So, disappointing times, it sounds like, for the Red Wings, even with the new arena coming to form soon enough, for in time for next season. Great for them. The Tigers, once again, talking about sour grapes here from my standpoint, well, they don't got a new stadium coming either. They might be losing a lot more. And they got to bring back that darn guy, Brad Ausmus. Please. They're going to keep sabotaging their chances of winning, as I said already. And then you got these teams you see succeeding, the Indians, and they got a better manager. They got the manager the Tigers maybe could have had. A guy like Joe Madden managing the Cubs. Tigers should have tried to go after him, pursued him more heavily. I don't even know if they really pursued him at all. And he might have been going to the Cubs anyways because he saw the writing on the wall that the Cubs were in great position to win in the future and will be now, not only this year, but going forward. So a lot of sour grapes expressed by me to sum it up. And I think for a lot of Tigers fans, they had to hear the words that were uttered by Al Avila on Tuesday. It's a sign of things to come and that big changes are to come as well, Doc, for the Tigers.
Couldn't have said it better myself, my friend. Just got to, really look at it, and maybe we'll find out if they lower ticket prices. I'm going to shoot Alex Avila a text and see if he answers.
He should.
You like our text of the day bit there? It's very interesting. A lot of people have been liking it and saying it's been pretty funny. Anybody want me to text?
You know what? You probably should text Alex Avila now about my sour grapes. And really quick, there is no Buster of the Week or Toast of the Town for the Tigers, but how about in the playoffs, among the teams who are playing in the playoffs right now, such as the Indians, who I haven't spoken enough about, right? I think I have, actually. And Terry Francona, their manager. He should be the toast of the town, huh? What he's done?
No doubt about it. Keeping that team calm, cool, collected, ready to weather all storms, and playing that well. Undefeated so far in the postseason. And the Buster of the Week, you'd have to say, is Toronto's offense.
Where's it been, right?
Yeah, AWOL. That's it.
MIA, it has gone, and their big bats have gone silent. And that's why the Blue Jays are on the verge of being eliminated from the postseason. Doc, with that being said, I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, signing off for episode 62 of Tigers Talk in a very somber mood. Goodbye, all, and tune in next week to another fresh edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Goodbye.